All right, guys, we've got a big update for the next major Fire Emblem game on the Nintendo Switch 2. So we're going to jump right into what is happening here on LinkedIn. Big shout out to DocTray81 that also found this on LinkedIn. There was a person who put up some experience, and it was very interesting what they had to say. Now, this person has been working as a 3D character modeler, 3D character designer, lead character designer for a multitude of games for many years in the game industry. And one of their most recent experience that they had there was as a 3D character modeler for Nintendo. The time was for January 2025 through April 2025. So 4 months in Tokyo, Japan. And the person states that this is a sequel of Nintendo's SRPG tactical role-playing game on the Nintendo Switch 2. So a sequel for a tactical role-playing game on Switch 2. This was from January 2025 through April 2025. And that pretty much is, or I'm almost positive, would be a Fire Emblem game. Now, if you're wondering why it's such a short amount of time, a lot of times they bring in different contracted workers to get a game past the finish line. So they'll be developing the game, everything will be going, and then if they just need a bit of extra help in order to get some of the work done, they'll bring in contracted positions for 6 months or 4 months or 3 months, maybe even sometimes a year to get that done. So it's not like it's a full-time position, it's just a contracted position to help out and kind of get things past that. And that's what it looks like this person did when it comes to his profile. So if it's January 2025 through April 2025, that tells me that the game had pretty much needed that last push, as I've been tracking a brand new Fire Emblem game for years now at this point. It could be Fire Emblem 4 Remake, that could be something, or it could be a brand new Fire Emblem game that's going to be pushed out here. So what we do know is that the last number of Fire Emblem games, the last one that we got in terms of major, big, normal mainline Fire Emblem was back in 2019 with Fire Emblem Three Houses. The last Fire Emblem game that we got a little bit on a smaller scale and kind of more of an anniversary game was Fire Emblem Engage. That was in 2023, but I think that game was actually done for a bit and Nintendo held on to it for early 2023, but that game probably could have came out in 2022, and I'm not even sure when that game was finished up. Nintendo sometimes likes to sit on games depending on when it is to get it a good or clean release overall, so it doesn't kind of, I would say, interfere with maybe other third-party games or even their own first-party titles. So it does seem like they had been working on a brand new Fire Emblem game for multiple years now at this point, and if they're involving Koei Tecmo or even outside contracted work, I definitely think there could have been stuff that could have overlapped with what they did with Fire Emblem Engage, all things considered. I'm pretty sure that this game that they're working on has been worked on probably since 2019 or something like that, since they finished Fire Emblem Three Houses and the DLC and all of that. So it's a little bit interesting overall because Intelligent Systems and how they work, they're not the biggest game studio out there, but they also work with Koei Tecmo. Clearly they work with Nintendo in order to get Fire Emblem games done. Intelligent Systems also works on other Nintendo franchises like Paper Mario and WarioWare, for example. So very interesting dynamic that Intelligent Systems has with Nintendo, as Nintendo is still the owner of the IP when it comes to Fire Emblem. But this is very interesting here. I would expect there to be a new Fire Emblem game announced sometime this year, and it could be the next major new Fire Emblem, or it could be that Fire Emblem 4 remake that we've been talking about, or there could be multiple titles like they did back in 2017 where they announced Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia, a remake of an older game, in addition to the next major Fire Emblem game as well. So that's what they did back in 2017 with a direct, so that also could be very much a possibility here, but I'm guessing that whatever they announce, it'll probably just be one major next Fire Emblem game, whether it's a brand new title or a brand new remake of Fire Emblem 4. Now, for those who don't know about Fire Emblem 4, this is one of the best games in terms of the Fire Emblem series. It brought about so many different ideas that was used in Fire Emblem Awakening and those games going forward. So if they were able to bring back Fire Emblem 4, which has never gotten an official localization and stuck on the Super Nintendo, There's obviously fan translations out there that are great, and you can play those if you want, but I really love to see them take that game and modernize it and adapt it for the Nintendo Switch 2. I think that would be incredible. Now, these rumors have been going for quite some time. Maybe it was going to be Switch 1, or now it's going to be Switch 2, but it does seem it's distinctively Switch 2 at this point, because we weren't really sure if it was going to be a Switch 1 game, considering when the rumors were happening, but it does seem like Switch 2, and it's going to be that based off of this. Now, there could still be a Nintendo Switch 1, Nintendo Switch 2 type of thing, but I'm guessing now at this point, it is going to firmly be a Nintendo Switch 2 title, and of course, I'd be very excited for that. We got a Nintendo Direct that should be happening in July, so maybe we'll get our first glimpse at the next major Fire Emblem game at the Nintendo Direct coming up, or maybe even sometime this year. What do you guys think about potential big new Fire Emblem title coming to the Nintendo Switch 2? Let me know in the comment section below. But before we get into the next topic, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you are someone who is not subscribed, hit that like button and click that notification bell to get my Nintendo Switch 2 and RPG videos as soon as they drop. And let me know in the comment section what your favorite Fire Emblem game is. Now let's go ahead and jump into a very interesting survey that happened recently that shows exactly what I've been saying, and of course what Nintendo has been saying for years now at this point, and the average age and splits of Nintendo franchises and other franchises, and the ages on there. There are some narratives that everyone that likes Nintendo is just kids and all that, which is, that's fine. People can think whatever they want to, and kids are very important when it comes to any franchise. You want to make sure that you have new blood playing your games so it can continue on, and then when those kids have kids, when they grow up and have kids, they introduce their kids to the franchises. This is something that Nintendo has done for decades now at this point, you know, everybody that grew up with Nintendo and all of that. So there's nothing wrong with that, but I've been trying to tell people this is kind of how it is based off Nintendo's internal data and everything. So now we actually have a very interesting survey from GEM Partners, and they revealed the gender splits and average ages of Nintendo fans in multiple different series and RPGs out there. They had 180,000 plus Japanese gamers, and they surveyed them on their age range and so many other things. So let's talk about it. So Splatoon, in the genre of third-person shooter action, has a gender ratio male to female of 65-30 at an average age of 27. Very interesting there. The Kirby series, 45-55 split male to female, and 30-year-old average in terms of people playing the game. The Mario series, 70-30 split, average age is 32. Pokemon series, 60-40 split, and the average age is 32. Legend of Zelda series, 60-40 split, average age is 35. Animal Crossing series, the gender split is 25-75. That's the most lopsided when it comes to male to female, with females being significantly higher than the male ratio, and the average age is 35. And then just games in general, it's a 75-25 split, with obviously men dominating that, and 30-year-old average as well. So it pretty much falls in line with what the data that Nintendo had a number of years back for the Nintendo Switch 1, where it showed that the majority of people are in their mid to late 20s to 40s. That is the huge base that are playing and buying the games. So here's what's happening. Kids are still playing on the Nintendo Switch, but what you have is that you have a lot of adults, parents, that purchase Nintendo games, that played when they were growing up, whether it was an NES, a Super Nintendo, a GameCube, some of these older systems, and then they grew up and they've been playing their whole life, and then they have kids, and then they let their kids play the games too. They introduce them to the games, and that's just the circle of things overall. So that's what's happening here. And they did go over some other stuff like Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, and those have even higher average ages of like 40 and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting to see overall, and it's something that absolutely all of these developers and publishers are looking at. Who's actually playing? Are they letting their children play? Like, what is happening with it? What you see is a lot of nonsense online of people trying to sit there and say that the majority of people that are playing Nintendo games are simply just children, and that is just not the case. They're adults that grew up with the older Nintendo hardware and are now buying the new Nintendo hardware and still playing these franchises like Kirby. Kirby's been around for decades. Mario's been around for decades. Pokemon's been around for decades. So yes, target audiences, a little bit of a different thing. Obviously, Pokemon wants the target the younger children. They want to target 10 years old or so. They want to get you young and then have you as a lifelong fan. I know, because I was there when Pokemon first started, and I was like, heck yeah, this is awesome. And I'm still playing Pokemon to this day. And now even my nephews that are, one of them is 3 and the other one is 6, they are super excited for Pokemon cards. They love Pokemon cards. So it doesn't matter at this point. It's been decades since when I first started playing Pokemon cards, and they're still just as popular, even way more popular than they were when I first started playing. So that's exactly what a lot of these companies are trying to do, but there are still a high number of adults. And like I said, this goes in line with Nintendo's Switch 1 data that showed the exact same thing that we're seeing here. So I think that's enough solid clad evidence at this point. But what do you guys think about this interesting survey here? Let me know in the comment section below. But let's go ahead and move on to another thing, and that is the situation that's happening with Nintendo Switch 2 development kits. These development kits are so high in demand, and Nintendo's kind of fractioning things out just a bit, that one of the best developers on the Nintendo Switch 1, or actually one of the developers that made one of the best, I would say, conversions and possible ports, they are still waiting on a Nintendo Switch 2 dev kit. So have you guys heard of the game called Warframe? This is a really cool free-to-play action third-person shooter type game. You've got cybernetic futuristic robot ninjas that fly around the galaxy and destroy different enemies. It's a pretty cool game. I played a lot of hours on the Nintendo Switch 1. This was a game that nobody really felt could come to the platform, but actually ended up coming and being a decent conversion of the game. Now, it's still nowhere near as good as the conversion on the Xbox or PlayStation, but it's still something that people felt wouldn't be possible, but it got done. And I think that Panic Button also helped out, or was the development there as well. So let's talk about Warframe and the developers saying that, hey, they still don't have a Nintendo Switch 2 development kit. So let's talk about this. So they recently stated that, quote, our tech team is so excited to take advantage of the Switch 2's high-speed cores and other really cool features of it, but there's just such a backlog for dev kits. I know our programmers are just like, oh, I can't wait, Sinclair continued. So we definitely have plans, and when we get a dev kit, we'll be doing a custom build for Warframe. Absolutely. Faster loading times. There's a lot of stuff that we can do to take advantage of extra cores, but we can't until we get a dev kit. So if you know anyone, so yeah, that's definitely unfortunate with this, because once again, Warframe is completely playable on the Nintendo Switch 2. So if you have the game, it's free to play. You can go download it right now on the Nintendo Switch 1 or Switch 2 eShop. But if you have it, all it can really do is kind of just take what they did, which is probably the 30 FPS cap, the resolution and everything, and just max it based off of what's on the Switch 1 profile. Maybe there's a little bit faster loading, but if they actually got a dev kit and was able to work on things, they can put out a patch or put out a second version of the game for the Nintendo Switch 2, almost like Fortnite did. Pretty much, I think it would be like Fortnite, where you just have a much better version of the same game running. So I think that's something that Nintendo definitely needs to get on, so they can get that dev kit and get working on it, because Warframe's a fantastic game. Now, it is incredibly long in the tooth. They've been doing this Warframe thing for a long time now at this point, but it's a successful game. And it's a game that people still, to this point, love to play. They've been pumping out content, and they did a great job of actually wanting to get this game on the Nintendo Switch 1. You have to give them credit for, I would say, commissioning and making sure that they want to get this game with Panic Button work together. So definitely they need to get a dev kit, and there's still other developers that are waiting for dev kits as well. So I'm guessing this is probably what's going to happen in the next number of months. We have the first waves of people that have dev kits, obviously the big third-party developers. We have some of the, I would say, exclusive indie partners, Shinin, studios like that, that also have a dev kit. And now it's going to get to the next second, third, fourth layer levels of people that maybe worked on a game or two, wasn't necessarily the most impactful games on the Switch 1, but then they're also going to get dev kits as well. Definitely seems like it's going to be a process, but I would expect these guys to have a dev kit by some point before the end of the year. Then they can work on that Warframe update, because once again, it is a great game, not a key game on the Nintendo Switch 1 that really pushed things, but a very surprising game, a great announcement when it did happen, and people were thinking, how is this even going to run on the Nintendo Switch 1? And yeah, like, it's a little bit when it comes to the resolution, and yeah, like I said, it's not necessarily the best version of the game by any means, but it's still a very solid version, and getting it on the Nintendo Switch 2 would absolutely be awesome. I would definitely kind of boot it back up and kind of pick up a little bit where I left off from when it comes to the Switch 1, because I think I put around 50 hours. I know I put a number of time. I even streamed the game as well. So I would definitely love to see a Switch 2 version to see what they actually ended up doing. But what are your thoughts on everything that we talked about here when it comes down to it? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you are someone new, click that notification bell, and check out my other Nintendo Switch 2 RPG content and more right here on screen. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.